Hi guys. So I opened Twitter today, which was my first mistake. And then I saw this tweet talking about a level called Test Tube by Skincare Expert. Or Blanket Addict. She goes by both. Now this tweet exploded in a huge discussion about, I guess, art. And I guess I just wanted to talk about it for a second. Especially considering I uploaded that video about level criticism not that long ago. And I feel like this is a good example of how that applies in the real world, in the community. There are a lot of replies to this tweet that basically amount to, oh, this is just object spam, or this is just a recent tab level. Lots of people laughing it off and deriding the creator of this level. And I guess people are just lashing out at what they perceive as elitist, like, art snobs. There's a reply thread in particular that goes over this. I'm gonna just go off right here and use this post as a reference for anybody who finds pretentious shit like this good. This isn't high art or anything amazingly artistic. Someone threw together pre-made assets in like 30 minutes and slapped them together. You can try to hide your awful creations behind having a meaning or whatever, but until that meaning is made clear or told in a way that makes sense, or the creator says the meaning themselves, the level is awful because it's a big ugly mess with no cohesion and no meaning for the random mess of objects in front of me. The thread goes on, but that's basically the gist of their criticism. And if you've seen that video about level criticism, you already know that this is not really how I think art works. So there's two problems with this line of reasoning. For one, this is clearly not random object spam, right? I mean, even if you don't really see any meaning behind it, it's obvious that this was made, like, deliberately. Like, there's some interesting things happening in this level. I don't mean to... Like, be honest with me here. Like, open your mind for a second and genuinely look at this level and tell me that there isn't a single interesting thing about it. There are plenty of interesting things happening here, and it doesn't take a genius to see that either. You don't have to have the meaning of a level spoon-fed to you. Meaning is something you interpret for yourself. I go a little more in-depth in that video, but, like, let's say Blanket Addict made a detailed explanation about what every single part of this level represents. Do you think that would change people's perception of the level at all? Do you think people would suddenly think, oh, actually this level is good now? I don't think so. I don't think that's why people have a problem with this level. And to be clear, if you don't see any meaning to this level, that doesn't mean you're stupid or bad at art or something. Frankly speaking, I don't see it either. But that doesn't mean I don't still like the level to a degree either. Anyway, point is, it's not a deflection. People don't just spam objects and say, oh, actually it has meaning, to pass it off as a good level. That's not really how this works. You don't see people praising random object spam levels in the recent tab. This level is clearly different from them. And I think that should be obvious if you just look at it. Anyway, I want to talk about one more tweet in this thread, and it's as follows. And as for you, 7AK, I think you only like this level because it reflects as one of your own lazy, pretentious, snobby, wannabe high art levels. Looking back at your works, I see most, if not all, of your works end up turning into random layout object spam. And then he gives some examples, which we really don't need to get into. This tweet in particular stood out to me because it reminded me of a comment I saw on my level criticism video, which I will read to you right now. Or at least I will read an excerpt of it because it's actually kind of long and most of it isn't relevant to this discussion here. I generally dislike the art is completely subjective position because it's often taken by artists that aren't very experienced or confident in their skills, and they try to use it to bring up their own bad work. It's all subjective. Technically, my art is just as good as a professional's. If you disagree, that's only your opinion and nothing more. This position utterly disrespects the craft and skills behind art. Now, this is interesting because I'm gonna tell you a personal story here. When I first started creating, I was really bad. Like most people, I think. I was influenced a lot by a creator known as Edicts. I was an active member in his Discord server, and I held his criticisms in high regard, because he spoke very confidently and very authoritatively. Not to mention, he created one of the most popular levels of that year, so he seemed to know what he was doing. What could go wrong? Which led me to create Apocalypse Afterparty. Now, in hindsight, I would say that Apocalypse Afterparty is an uninspired level, not very good, though I do stand by the gameplay, I guess. That's still a brain blast moment for me. But yeah, I did Laser Blitz style, like, when it had been done to death already by a dozen creators. And the reason I did that is because I had a very rigid understanding of what Geometry Dash levels were supposed to look like. It was only afterwards, when I changed my views a little bit about how I saw art and, as a consequence, Geometry Dash levels, that I was able to break free from that perspective a little bit and be a little bit more creative. You know, just trying to stop listening to what the community had to say about my levels and instead making something I was personally satisfied with. That's when I started making Removed Submission, which is the best level I've ever made. Which, for the record, I put a lot less effort in than Apocalypse After Party. I don't know, I just think it's very funny that someone left a comment on my video, probably not even knowing that I made that level, because otherwise, like, the existence of Removed Submission should disprove your argument immediately. Because I do agree with the viewpoint that interpreting a piece of art is a personal thing, and not something that you have to have spoon-fed to you. And that level criticism is a subjective thing, and not something you can make objective statements about. Anyway, you can watch that video again if you want. I explain it in more detail there, but I just wanted to briefly express my thoughts here. I'm gonna go back to editing my top 50 Insanes video now. Goodbye.